Hello, everybody. Pleasure to be here this year at the 2016 conference. We have, like Ken said, a large number and an esteemed group of panelists ready to go. The topic that we're going to talk about now is obviously working in a multi-capacity new industry, right? It's more than just the linear product that you have to produce for the TV screen. It's what accompanies it. And, you know, starting to look at some numbers from some reports this year where things like Microsoft had said 90% of all those at home watching TV or listening to something also have a phone in their lap. There was a number that I saw this morning on a report by Accenture that 40% of all millennials now just watch their content on a device. 85% of people use 2 devices at once while watching TV. So the numbers are staggering as far as the multitasking that is coming up with the generation behind us. Well, I'll put Chris in that generation, but everyone else. And I think that, you know, yeah, like last night I was watching my kid watch Sunday Night Football, and he had 2 devices going on with his flag, his fantasy football team, and his phone was doing something on Snapchat. So we have to win the war on what's on the screen, and we have to win the war on what's in their lap. And so talking to us today, I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself about kind of just first your name and your title and what you do, and then maybe some case studies as to how we win that second screen experience.
My name's Chris Brown with Turner Sports, Director of Technical Operations. And you know, we're actually in an interesting spot, as you pointed out, where we are absolutely trying to figure out sort of what all of the second screen options are going to be in terms of, it's not just, you know, what device is it, it's which outlet is it, which outlets are the ones that people are gravitating towards. You know, then there's the sales component that ties into that. You know, which outlets are sales pushing us to, and then what are you actually going to do? Thankfully, my job's not coming up with what they need to do. It's just figuring out how to make it all work inside the linear broadcast at the same time. So, you know, again, you could, again, talk for much longer than just this panel about that, so.
All right.
All righty. Good afternoon. I'm Don Colantonio. I retired from ESPN a year ago, and I'm presently working with AT&T Entertainment, DirecTV, and some other clients on a number of projects, but I'm here to speak about our multi-screen applications. That it was 10 years ago that I began working with DirecTV on a way of expanding content on events to service their strategy, which stemmed from the success of Sunday Ticket, to generate additional experiences on golf and tennis events in particular. And this ranged from repurposing signals of different court events to actually generating original programming and coming up with data interfaces and other means to expand the experience. And that went from playing on a linear platform to also servicing broadband and mobile applications. And we'll expand on that a bit further. My boss, John Ward, is here, and he's got a video presentation, and that speaks to the breadth of what DirecTV is doing in this realm.
Jason.
My name is Jason Hedgcock. I'm with the MLB Network. I'm the manager of remote technical operations. Primarily, we oversee the games footage, but this year we started doing simulcasts, and we were doing .com work for a second screen experience, as well as a 4K HD out of the same truck. So kind of unique to this panel in that we were doing 3 shows at one time out of 1 mobile unit and hitting 3 different platforms. So that's sort of what I bring.
Yeah, we'll drill down deeper in a second. Let's just keep doing some intros. Mark?
I'm Mark Hulsey. I'm the Senior Vice President of Production at Big Ten Network. I'm going to show a couple of examples of what we're doing not only in our live events to increase the amount of digital content, but also just kind of a new way of thinking in regards to original programming. We've just had to evolve over time, and hopefully the examples I show you will kind of show you what we've done at BTN.
Leon Schweir, Pac-12 Networks, SVP of Production and Digital Content. And much like Mark, it's been a year where we've increased our digital profile. We've done Twitter Live as standalone events. And of course, probably like everyone on the panel here, Facebook Live has become a real handy tool. So again, we'll have some examples when we get there.
I'm John Ward from AT&T Entertainment Group, SVP of Content Operations. My teams handle all of our out-of-market sports packages, so NFL Sunday Ticket, all of the league packages, all the interactive events, which we'll be looking at a little bit later here, talking about our interactive elements. And obviously, our group's been growing through, I was with DirecTV, a big acquisition with AT&T and the mobility side, and clearly we're all about moving bits now. It's whether it's satellite or whether it's with mobile. So excited to be here.
All right, that's all the time we have today. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so Chris, let's kind of get a little bit deeper. You're first because you're just closest to me. Turner has, I believe, even developed almost like a Turner truck per se to kind of handle some of these second screen initiatives, right? Almost like a remote unit that can handle a lot of the legwork that you guys have to do for this kind of stuff.
Right, so one of the things that we were able to do, we worked with NEP, developing some new support units for trucks that manage our linear broadcasts. And one of the things that when we sat at the table with NEP to design the trailer, one of the things that we talked about was the fact that we were going to have, we knew that for the digital assets that fall under Turner Sports, that we knew we were going to have a number of other demands and needs in terms of outlets. That is the Facebook Lives, that is Twitter, that's all of those, and then just the network, the actual websites themselves, whether it was PGA.com or NBA.com. We knew that we were going to have to be able to create these experiences, and we needed some extremely flexible workspace in order to be able to do that. And so just sitting at the table with NEP, we've got these expandable B units now that allow for multiple spaces where you can actually set up small control rooms, and you can actually do, and the Ryder Cup being probably one of our more prominent examples, where we were doing a Facebook Live experience. We were using an actual traditional production facility to accommodate a PGA.com live stream, and then we had yet another experience that was being done out of there with the company Pixelot. So everybody was in individual work and production spaces as well as traditional transmission spaces, and then also just having the bench space for all of those that are managing all of these processes to be able to see all of the feeds in real time, both the live feeds being generated at the golf course as well as looking at their own returns. It's become evident or apparent that they being our digital partners within Turner, actually they need the space. They need the space and they need the technical tools.
How often does that truck roll?
Well, it's brand new, so its first show was Ryder Cup. Not sure how many more times we're going to have. Right now, the biggest thing that's on their list again is PGA Championship next year, but I certainly expect that kind of as we move through some of our spaces with NBA, it's also where we host. We have our digital experience, TNT Overtime, that gets managed out of that truck, and then essentially anytime any of our digital partners come out to any of those events, that's where they work from.
And do you get extra production budget for this thing? Does it need to self-fund itself with advertising?
It depends. I'll be honest. The social media space has brought significant resources to the table, and that has changed a little bit in terms of how we approach them. There's a little bit of flexibility there, but I would say when you're dealing with just the straight websites, those are, essentially they're add-ons, right? It's just we need you to produce this for NBA.com, or you're producing this for PGA.com, but no, there's no extra funding for it, short of the one or two extra people that you gotta have to make this work.
All right, you can try the lemonade stand. Don, what do you got to show us? I think you wanted to talk a little bit about maybe some of the Mosaic stuff.
Yep, we've got a slide to show here. I think this is, for those of you who haven't seen this already on DirecTV, this is the Wimbledon experience. What you see is the network program up in the upper left, and then 5 individual courts which are shown, where matches are shown start to finish. We got into this 10 years ago at a time when we were working in standard definition. We migrated into HD. Again, back then, multiplexing signals to get them back was a lot more challenging than it is today. This application has evolved. You can see this on 701 on DirecTV. And then on the left, if you go to the next slide, this is the US Open. Same concept, different look. But you can see we've integrated player bios. And on the next slide, real-time scoring, and one more slide, and social media, which was recently introduced. So we've got people building applications to integrate data into the experience, and we're also looking at serving the tennis fan that wants to go deeper. I think most people will agree that your casual fans that tune in for majors are satisfied with the network programming, but your hardcore tennis fans will migrate to the other matches to see a match from start to finish, uninterrupted by studio wraps. And we actually do our own studio wraps between matches to keep the viewers on the respective channels. And this is where we are today with this. We're getting a good response, and there's somewhat of a business model behind it. There's a marketing model, and this content is also living well beyond the linear channel, as I mentioned earlier, on other platforms.
Right, so this is more than just 701. It's also available on, if you have a tablet or a phone, can you cycle through?
Right. Well, in this example here, it's ESPN, so it's available on Watch ESPN. All these individual channels are presented there. I think there's one more slide that demonstrates golf. And then you've got a real-time leaderboard. This was this past year's British Open at Troon. And this is a good example where we're creating original content and not just repurposing world feed signals of the outer courts. We've got a featured group, a featured hole, and the first tee channel, yeah. It says Golf Central, but it's something else.
Now, is this put together on site, or is this sent back to the plant and then?
In this case, it's created on site. So there is investment in creating original content to complement the network programming. And I guess the theme of this is operating lean and finding efficiencies. And that's really part of the challenge. Every event we do, even though it could be the same sport, has different opportunities based on the equipment configuration, the trucks being used, the EVS networking. Again, 10 years ago, it was tough to extract content. Now we pride ourselves on being able to repurpose all the great network elements that are created and shown once in the network telecast. We could repurpose them across all the other channels. But that's all, it takes some innovation and imagination as to how we're going to, tap into the existing workflow without duplicating it with more trucks and more people and so forth in order to extract that content and create an additional presentation.
All right, thank you, Don. Jason, what do you got?
So this year, during our regular season game, we do 26 regular season games, and our partners at MLB.com asked if they could join us to do a second screen experience. I have a short video. If you guys want to play it with the volume down, it can just roll while I talk. Essentially, the second screen experience for us was
Welcome
MLB
in
Plus.
to MLB Plus, presented by T-Mobile.
And it allowed us to send cameras back to their studio in Chelsea, where they created the second screen experience for the hardcore baseball fan. The goal was to show additional stats, additional graphics, and additional things that they wouldn't get in the standard telecast, different angles, different things that might not translate as well. And it provided a showcase for .com for their StatCast product. It allowed us to integrate really easily because we only added 2 cameras for them, and otherwise they were taking all the standard cameras that we were using for our regular telecast. They were able to integrate ENG stuff, send it out, little studio stuff to interject additional stats. So it really allowed us to increase to another platform with very limited additional resources on site. A little bit of transmission and 2 cameras and 2 camera operators. When we were doing that, we also included a 4K element to our show this year where we were broadcasting for DirecTV in 4K as well as our standard show. So we were able to integrate all of those platforms out of one B unit for minimal cost, but provided a lot more impact to all the platforms, I think, by sharing the resources across the board, cameras being shared amongst the sources, audio and all that sort of on-site.
And what I think is nice is that it's not a matter where you're borrowing and stealing every resource from the main telecast, right? You're able to bring some things to the table and give it to them as well.
Yes, so they had 2 dedicated cameras for themselves, and we integrated the comms from Chelsea through site to those camera operators so the director in Chelsea could have specific things if he needed, but they also had access to our cameras via a 10-channel MUX, so that that they had the infrastructure there, and when they wanted something specific, they could use their 2 local cameras.
And I see it's powered by an Amazon or a T-Mobile or something, so advertising goes into this, right?
Yeah, and this is it was all sold every week, and that's but it gave a lot of this advanced graphical stuff isn't something we're going to integrate on site to a standard telecast, but to the hardcore fan, they're going to sit and watch those things
Which
over.
is nice, because a lot of those graphics get left on the floor and they never actually make the telecast that we generate throughout the show. So it's nice for those to have a home if they don't make it on the actual linear screen.
Right, and this gives the fans the ability to watch things over and over again without having to use the DVR and go back and miss advanced gameplay. They can have the standard telecast on while they have this going in their second screen.
Great, thank you. Mark, let's talk a little bit about the Big Ten. I know you guys have the Big Ten Field Pass. Kind of walk us through a little bit of what you guys have.
Sure. We're always looking for ways to add digital content, and Leon and I we're blessed because we get to cover college football, which is just the greatest thing in the world. And when you think about it, when you have Michigan, Ohio State, some of these iconic programs, there's a lot of things that take place before the game that not necessarily is showed on the linear network. The bands, the walk-ons to the field, we have access to all these cameras. So I was in the truck a couple of years ago, and I saw all these images, and I was thinking to myself, well, why aren't people seeing this? Because you have a studio show before the game. You've got long, commercial breaks to take before kickoff. So we found a way to create a separate feed that is streamed on BTN To Go and Facebook Live. And I'll show you 90 seconds of some of the great images we captured from this past season.
Great.
So for 20 minutes before the opening kick, we have 2 hard cameras. We take POV cameras that are set, and the big thing for us is a lot of these schools now have wireless RF cams, and we will do a deal with them, and we'll supply the operator, and they'll supply the equipment. And we'll do a router cut in the truck, so it doesn't upset the regular guys in doing the actual game broadcast. And it's brought significant value. It promotes the game that's coming up. It gives us additional digital content, and just a lot of times these great images just aren't seen on the linear broadcast for one reason or the other, and it's been zero cost, which has been an added benefit as well.
And you win the award for getting us most pumped up out of all the other videos. How much of it is live versus ENG and put together for later use, whether it's being posted to YouTube or Facebook or something, versus a live stream that's being pushed out pre-game and post-game at the moment?
Well, this is all live. In my next example, I'll show you some of the stuff that is sent out before the actual show starts. But for this, the beauty is, it's the same infrastructure, the same people, the same truck, the same cameras actually that are broadcasting the game. And we're just capturing the content that's there every game. Every college football game that there is, these things take place. For programs like Michigan and Ohio State, it's probably a little higher level. But that's the beauty. It just has been something that's been added value, and it's brought on additional sponsorship, and it's been fairly easy to do. Now it's to the point where our director instead of doing a router cut, he gets so pumped up before he directs the game, he wants to direct this live. And he goes, we'll do the other pre-production later. I enjoy doing this.
I'm pumped up. Yeah.
So it's been fun. It's been really great.
You have another video you want to?
Yeah, I do. So original programming, we've completely rethought this whole process. In fact, Leon started this show at the Big Ten Network called The Journey. It's our weekly recap of all the great sights and sounds from college football. And it's a post-produced show, and typically we would shoot it on Saturdays. We'd bring all the materials back to Chicago on Sundays and then edit in 24-hour edit sessions for a Tuesday linear debut. The problem is now you just have to think of it differently. So we throw content out the second we get it into Chicago, and we created a little segment called Slow-Mo Mondays that we post on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And I want to show you one clip because there was a funny story behind it. It's a 1-minute clip of a Jabril Peppers punt return for a touchdown. And Peppers is a star at Michigan.
I want to see number 5 take one to the house.
Well, now Peppers will take the ball at the 44. He'll return to the right. Now he's at the 40. He's at the 30. He's at the 25. He's at the 15 to 10 to 5. Touchdown, Jabril Peppers. But there's a flag thrown.
Yeah, the funny thing is that play never counted. It was called back because of a penalty. But that clip that was sent out on Monday received over 900,000 views. And it just shows. I mean, we shoot the content. We own the content. It's usually neatly packaged into this 30-minute show that airs on Tuesday nights. But now we send segments out. And it's tripled our viewership in the show versus how we did it in previous years. And it's just got our folks to think of it in a different way. Every second that they shoot something, it's content that's valuable. And even a punt return for a touchdown that never counted is something that almost 1 million people viewed. And it's just made us think of things a different way.
Well, now it has 900,001 views. Leon, you've been waiting patiently. I know it's kind of a continuing of the conversation that we had spoken about, which is opening up the telecast before and after a little bit and extending the length of the conversation around the event, right?
And taking off from where Mark was mentioning about using the people already there, skilled people who know how to tell stories, making the most out of them, and using them to create this content. The examples I have is a little bit of also where you get the feedback from the digital team. And it really was a learning curve this year from where we started in August to where we ended up at the beginning of December. So I think I have a slide here just on a pregame element. It's a Facebook Live, which has really become our go-to item on football. And for years, everybody who ever did a pregame show had team arrivals, teams warming up. And so we're doing that still. The only difference is we try to do this either through TVU or live view and have it be outside the truck. And so it's basically you're doing a ENG that's coming into San Francisco as SDI, getting record, excuse me, into the MAM for the pregame, but meanwhile going live on Facebook. And you can just roll, I'll talk over it. But you know, at the beginning when we started doing these, we had announcers kind of describing stuff, and then we learned from our digital team, simple is better. Imagine little thumbs ups and hearts flying over this as it's live on Facebook. This is the University of Washington pregame ritual, which is about an hour before game time. I'm sure they wish they could have that many people on the field on New Year's Eve when they play Alabama. But you can go to the next slide. But that stuff gets like, you know, almost 10,000 hits usually if you stay with it long enough. It takes like 5 minutes to get that tipping point to tell people to go to Facebook Live, and of course you use it to drive your viewership, and someday we hope we'll get revenue off Facebook. The next example is in-game, and this is where the guys in the truck who have been around and know what to do give you a tip-off of what might happen that night, and then this is a case of having your digital team ready to send this out the minute it happens. So if you want to play it, I'll talk over this too. At Arizona State, they have a curtain of distraction, and this is Michael Phelps is distracting the foul shooter for, I think it's Oregon State there. So we knew it was going to happen. So a couple things. The truck did a nice job of branding it. So you see our logos all over the place. So on the news side, when local stations are showing it, no mistaking where it came from. But the most important thing was, by the way, He misses both foul shots. You see
You
this
know why
one.
this is great? Because Mike,
You know you're killing
such
me
a
with
good
this.
swimmer, he didn't go to college, so he's getting his college experience. That's great.
I mean, well, we win that panel award today.
And he misses both.
That's unbelievable.
But because we got it out right away, we claimed it on YouTube, and we knew this type of thing would be sent around. So since we did the claiming, as I like to tell the truck guys, they paid for their show that night. It wasn't a ton of money, but you get $30,000, $40,000 if you add up like a month worth of viewing of this on YouTube. And as long as you get it out there first, you're going to get those hits in revenue.
But what do you think, Leon? You looked at pre-game and then there's post-game, and then there was some in-game. But what about the actual game? Like, what about conversations about taking the entire game, if it's a lesser televised event that isn't on the mainstream network, something that might not ordinarily be seen, some volleyball game?
You didn't prep me. I was going to have to talk about Twitter, so. But we've done Twitter this year, and I'll need to compose my thoughts on how well I think that went. But
All right, we'll give you a second, and we'll go to.
I have
we'll go
one
to
last
John.
one here, and this is another example of where your people learning how it's just a little bit different from what they've been doing for ages. So the reporter here, Kate Scott, she's been doing end-of-game interviews for years, and you know how it is on live TV. You get the guy, whoever the coach or player is, you try to get it done in about 20 seconds. Then you throw back to the studio. In this case, threw back to the studio and then immediately went to another game. So she's doing some follow-up interviews, already did her live hit at the end of the game. And just because she realizes this is going to end up on social, she plays it a little differently than any other reporter would be if you're on a linear telecast. You can play this one you should listen to.
I do see your mom. Here comes Mama. Understandably wanting to give Adori a hug. Let them have a nice little moment. Hey, Mama, stay in here. You're pretty emotional. You've seen this guy play really well, a lot. How come you're so emotional today?
I wasn't able to come to no games last year. I was diagnosed with breast cancer last year. But God, He saved me in 4 months. He gave me back to my baby. So I can see every game. And I can be the proudest mama that he lent me this baby. I'm so proud of my son. I'm so proud of you, baby. Thank you, Mama. All day life.
We are so happy to have you here.
So anyways, we got lots of views that night. And again, it's just getting your people in a year's worth of working. Like, you can play a little different when you know it's going to end up as a social product versus on the network.
And that doesn't end up anywhere if it's not posted.
It's not, right, because
universal?
we were in another game at that point, and we
Right.
sent it out while the other game was going on.
Make a note to call my mother later. Last but not least, John, do you want to obviously continue the conversation about what AT&T Media Group is doing, especially in the realms of streaming and some of that?
Sure. In the interest of time, go ahead and roll the tape. We'll talk a little bit about it here. Don showed earlier slides about the interactive stuff that we've been doing. In addition, I've got some examples, I hope, of the events themselves. Masters was an example. We actually do all the golf and tennis majors as far as a multiple screen event. All of those feeds actually come into the broadcast center, as Don indicated. We turn those back around to ESPN. They send them out as part of Watch ESPN's app. In addition, with our other sports events that we do, one of the things we've been looking at as far as social engagement in and around with the acquisition, AT&T being involved. This year we added additional special mixes. We did an election mix, which obviously did not change the result of the election, but pretty cool application in that we worked with the Associated Press, tabulated electoral votes as they came in, had maps of the states. We had all of the various networks that were part of our actual coverage. So that was a pretty cool thing. And as an offshoot to that, sort of an outreach thing that we actually started before AT&T came in, it actually started 10 years ago with Katrina, the big storm that obviously hit the New Orleans area. We actually gather all of our resources together to create a storm channel mix where we use all of the weather service stuff from Weather Channel, Weather Nation, but also all local stations that are affected in these affected areas. And we've got a lot of great response from that. So,
Yeah, I don't know if we have.
I had a tape.
Yeah, your video, your slides, but obviously it's more than just video streams being combined. It's a lot
Ah,
of data, a lot of
here it
RSS feeds.
Oh, there it is. So just quickly, the interactive piece of all this stuff is done at the set-top box level. So this is all MPEG video, but this is sort of a hybrid version of our sports mix that we do. And this was in and around, obviously, during the NCAA tournament time, March Madness. Audience, we've got a sponsorship piece to this, because obviously art for art's sake, money for God's sake, you know, we've got to make money with this stuff. Lexus, where this application you can actually use and build your own Lexus and go through and identify traits, customize it. Obviously, I want mine in Wolfpack red. You can play basketball trivia, you can do your bracket, you actually have an interactive app that we do with the tournament itself. This is the normal sports look where we use all of our carriage agreements. We have the rights to display them in this Mosaic layer. You can go around, listen to the apps, gives you the title of actually what's on the air at the time. You can select it full screen. With Score Guide, you can actually call up data and interactive statistics that give you all the league information, all of the standings, anything that you really basically want to track. Don spoke earlier about Wimbledon. Wimbledon is one of these that actually they've done over in London as far as production for these Mosaic channels out of IMG's facilities. All comes back, same process to the broadcast center. We take it, turn back around to ESPN with interactive data, live scoring. You can track players, schedules, all the normal stuff that we do with all the golf and tennis majors, so pretty cool with that. The other two examples that I kind of spoke about, hopefully are coming up, the election mix as well as the severe weather mix. The election mix, we'd done it a few years earlier, but the last two elections, I should say, but this was a pretty cool app where we actually tracked all the various news channels. We swap out what's current, what makes sense at the time. Comedy Central we're a fan of just because of the way they cover the election stuff, but obviously customizable to what you want to look for, electoral college, the actual interactive map of states and how they're going to be kind of played out here.
Population centers than the Republican area. So if you're in the Clinton campaign headquarters, you're reasonably happy with the.
But again, eventually, you know, our feeling is all of this stuff that we've been doing on the linear side will eventually be part of our mobile offering. And people will be able to customize this as well as these mixes customizable to whatever your interests are at the time. And this last example was the weather mix that I had spoken about earlier. The bottom left cell is comprised of all local channels that are in affected areas. We get the rights from the local broadcasters to use their footage.
You know, and you had a throwaway line that I know by no means is a throwaway line where you said, you know, you've got to make money on this stuff. And this can kind of be a question for obviously anybody who wants to take it, is how much of all of this is the cost of doing business because there's a demographic that's craving it versus how much of it is looked at as a revenue stream that can add dollars to the overall budget to keep things moving forward? Like, you know, where do you guys kind of draw the line as far as that conversation goes?
I mean, I'll start. Just our new parent, we're moving bits. I spoke about it earlier. It's business, it's data, right? You know, I joked at another panel I was on that we're all now eventually producing content to sell data plans, and to a certain degree, that's right. I mean, I think that's largely where it's going, and it's largely where our audience is and how they're consuming the media.
I mean, I was going to say that I think the shift is actually is already begun. I mean, I would say probably, you know, 5-7 years ago, it was just a part of doing business. You had this, you know, with NBA.com and some of the others, you had this digital property that you had to support. And so, again, to the point of the panel, you try to do it as inexpensively as possible. But now, I think the paradigm is shifting, in that, you know, this is a consumable thing. We're gearing programming for it. You know, I think the NBA's latest thing with their mobile offering with a different camera angle that's a little bit closer, a little bit better viewed on a mobile device as opposed to the traditional network coverage is part of it. I mean, there's actual resources being put at it now more than before because it is, like you pointed out, it's a business now. I mean, it is a thriving business.
I would add that the the network inventory is being rolled into the digital packages, and there's also now we're seeing that there are discrete ads that are just on the digital platforms with this content. But we're rolling breaks in the golf, in the extra channels. We're rolling breaks that aren't simultaneous with the network breaks. We're rolling breaks on changeovers in tennis.
Do we have questions from the room for anyone? Or I'll just keep on going. All right, I'll go. One of the things that we were talking about earlier was, it's no longer just thinking about how you have to frame shots, where cameras need to be placed, the size of graphics, the number of graphics for screens that range in the home from obviously anywhere from, let's just say, 17 inches to 80 inches. But it's also now you've got to worry about people holding smartphones, tablets, iPads, laptops, and so forth. How much conversations do you have as far as, those types of mindful considerations and how it's going to affect different feeds downstream and who's going to get crunched on that stuff?
I have a slide I could use as an example for this. It's an example of when you don't have control of the process, someone else is taking it from you. So we had a gymnast a year ago. We sent out the little 1 minute highlight, which is what our MSOs like us to do, 1 minute per event. But someone just took the whole 2 minutes and 45-second performance, got it out on Facebook and other social. Within a week, it went to like 38 million views. The girl, Sofina de Jesus, ended up being on Ellen, Good Morning America, all that sort of thing. So when that sort of thing gets kind of hijacked, you just got to grit your teeth and see how can you bring that back around. So what we did was use our own social platforms to say every time Sofina was on a show or we're going to be somewhere, don't forget to watch her this week. Don't forget to watch her team next week, that sort of thing. And it's a long tail revenue thing, but last year gymnastics finished third for us in viewership, a little because of this one gymnast behind football and men's basketball, beating out baseball and softball. So.
Right, and Jason, I feel like this is probably a challenge you guys wrestle with too, right? And when you look at things like the StatCast and what's available on the screen versus a handheld.
Yeah, we're really fortunate in that our digital side tends to take whatever we produce and scale it appropriately for their screens. We have some conversation about it, but generally the conversation is still driven by the linear product and making sure that the product looks good on the screen and then scaling it appropriately for the device and allowing our digital team to make sure that it scales appropriately. And then, and that takes a little pressure off of our traditional front bench. They're not focused on that, but the packages are built ahead of time that way and then they're scaled.
The panel before us was talking about things like 4K and HDR, and maybe I'm biased to make our panel seem more important, but I think there's something to be said about this growing audience that does consume their media on stream devices. At what point does, like to Chris's point, where the tips scale to the point where that streamed event, where that content that lives on the phone or the tablet almost outweighs the significance of what's happening on the linear screen?
In my opinion, I still think the live sporting event is still primarily a linear experience. I think we have to protect that. But in the example I showed, at least in regards to BTN, original programming, I think now digitally the content that we produce is just as much as the focus is the linear debuts of all these shows. But I still think the live event, we still focus, how do we serve our customers the best way to give them the best visual experience on the linear channel first.
Yeah, we do, like you say, a similar show, behind the scenes football, and we found all the premieres, 75 to 80% of all the premieres were on TV everywhere versus on the linear network.
Ken is holding a microphone. Any? Okay.
Well, I'll just project then. So you kind of mentioned that there's no money really in this, and there's no real money for this. So then my question is, how do you measure success? Is it, you mentioned data, you mentioned best experience that you can have. Is it just YouTube viewership, or are there objective measures, or is it still very subjective?
We're hoping that revenue does come along. Twitter, actually, you asked me about Twitter. Twitter Amplify has been a nice little revenue source. You choose certain things that you're going to hit on the course of a weekend concerning a game, and you'll get you put sponsorship on there and you get the numbers that make the sponsors happy. Facebook's a little bit more of a challenge. They have very strict banner ad guidelines that it's going to take manning, and so you better have sold the sponsorship before you have people doing that work. Snapchat has options. It's getting there. There was none 2 years ago.
Facebook Live seems like a popular buzzword. I mean, I know that, a company like Meerkat tried to stream live and that didn't work, and Periscope, I know what they do over Twitter, but Facebook Live seems to be the current most hottest rage among sports broadcasters in trying to stream stuff. I know Bleacher Report does games there. I know Showtime, my competitor, did something this past weekend, some undercards. What's your guys' take on where Facebook Live is going with this whole dichotomy?
I mean, I probably have a little different perspective because we don't really use Facebook Live, but from my view, it's obviously the current tool, and I think it's important on the remote side to try to focus on how we build something that can go to whatever the next tool is. You mentioned 4 or 5 different streaming platforms in that vein already, and so creating our content that when Facebook Live gets kind of pushed off to the side and we go to the next one, we can take whatever we built for Facebook Live and just slide it into the next streaming platform, whoever service that is.
Any more? Ken still has the microphone. How much synergy is there between the digital groups, which I imagine are ultimately responsible for trying to help create and generate ideas for their social streams, versus production and what their goals are and what their objectives are? Are the two groups in your cases working well together? Are there almost conflicting needs where they're kind of butting heads a little bit? What do you see so far?
I don't see so much conflict in terms of inability to work together. I think one of the things that often causes a pain point, if you will, would be the fact that the rights agreements between linear and digital are often very different. And so sometimes that makes it more challenging as you sort of lean on the linear partner to help create whatever environment or whatever outcome you're looking for the digital side. There's a little bit of push and pull there. And again, it's, usually, or at least it's been my experience, that it's the digital that's really trying to stretch sort of the boundaries of whatever those digital rights are to be able to leverage the assets that linear has when you are trying to save, as opposed to, for example, if you do have, for example, a Facebook sponsorship that's able to support and pay for a lot of pieces, then they can kind of go on their own. But when you don't have that behind you, then that's where I think sometimes it just gets, I'm going to use the word tricky, a nice word for it.
Well, we work with multiple rights holders and networks, and the network show is always sacrosanct. But what our objective is to operate as unobtrusively as possible, to extract as much content to generate these additional programs. And if we go about our job without disturbing things, a lot of times, we find that the guys driving the train at the network, when they see a lot of their elements being repurposed and their content being presented across these additional channels, they're very supportive of it, and they're coming to us with ideas and suggestions, and it works.
We work hand in hand with our digital group. We actually have a weekly meeting between our two groups where we discuss upcoming events, what we need to do, and how we can support each other, and using resources from each group to further the product as a whole.
Yeah, same here. Our groups, they have to work together. And I think now they realize when they see, a lot of times our producers in the trucks, they don't see ratings, but when our digital folks can tell them, this is how many people actually saw this on social, it empowers them. I mean, it gives them even more reason to produce great content. So both sides work really well together.
Great. I think with that, we'll conclude this panel. Thank everyone for your time, and thank you, our distinguished panelists.